All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, of course, with the start of a new NFL season just several days away, the race is on for all 31 teams in the league to try to catch and dethrone the reigning Super Bowl champions in the Kansas City Chiefs. And also, that race is on as well in the AFC West. As when you think about it, the Chiefs have just dominated this division. They've won it the last 7 years in a row, and they're looking to make it eight straight. And of course, of course, as we're expected to see Kansas City go out there and give their best effort and then some to repeat as Super Bowl champions. Let's not forget that this team has also made it to at least the AFC championship game in each of the last 5 years. You think about the quarterback head coach duo that you have with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Obviously, you think about this era of football, they're leading the way as far as duos go, and they're ranking up there, year by year, all time with some of the great quarterback head coaching duos. And I mean, Andy Reid obviously is one of the best head coaches in NFL history. And you look at Patrick Mahomes, one of, if not the best quarterback of this era. And he looks to be the future of the position. And of course, he gutted it out last year through pain to help the Chiefs win another Super Bowl championship. They're second in 4 years. Now they're looking to make it 3 and 5. The skill positions around Patrick Mahomes on offense. You think about the youngster at running back, Isaiah Pacheco, who really made a name for himself last year. You still have the veteran do-it-all tight end for Kansas City as far as the pass game goes with Travis Kelsey. And of course, it seems like Travis Kelsey and Mahomes, they've been together so long that they could basically complete each other's sentences for one another. That's how connected that they are. Now, defensively for Kansas City, the Chris Jones holdout. How much is this going to affect this team? That's going to be one big question that needs to be answered as this season goes on. Obviously, I think at some point the Chris Jones deal will get worked out. So for the Chiefs, they're looking to piece it all together once again because the scary thing about it, last year was supposed to be a rebuild year for Kansas City. And not only were they a contender, they won it all. So what's going to happen now? You look at this Kansas City schedule, and before I get into it, I'll say this. The Chiefs know that they're going to be dealing with everybody's A game because they're the champs. But then you look at what the Chiefs have meant to the NFL in recent years. So this is a team that definitely is always and has been up to the challenge in recent years as far as dealing with everybody's best shot. Now, week number 2, Kansas City will be in Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars. Of course, these two clubs met in the divisional round last year, and Jacksonville gave Kansas City their best punch, if you will. Week number 4 at the newly improved New York Jets with Aaron Rodgers. Week 6, they're home for Denver. And I say that because, the Broncos Chiefs game has been an important game historically to this division, even going back when they were in the AFL together. But let's see how improved that the Denver Broncos are this season. Week number 7, the Chiefs will host the Chargers. Week number 8, they're at Denver. So we've seen this a lot this year where the schedule makers put, two divisional foes to meet each other in a short window. And we're seeing it here with the Broncos and Chiefs. Week number 9, they're going to take on Miami in Germany. Week number 11, a rematch of this past February Super Bowl when the Chiefs welcome the Philadelphia Eagles to Arrowhead. Week number 14, the Chiefs will host the Bills in a contest that could come down to home field advantage, possibly in the AFC. The same can be said about week number 17 when the Chiefs welcome the Bengals to town. And of course, these two teams have met in the AFC Championship game in each of the last 2 years. And finally, Kansas City will finish on the road against the Chargers. Now, for those Denver Broncos, the expectations were so high going into last season, and they wilted under them. Most notably, the quarterback play of Russell Wilson was hands down the biggest disappointment of last season. I talked about this last year as it almost looked as if Pete Carroll and the Seattle Seahawks suckered the Denver Broncos. There were a lot of people coming into last season who expected the Broncos to be Super Bowl contenders. And when it was all said and done, the Broncos limped to a 5-12 record. We saw them go through two different head coaches last year. We saw them with a championship defense, but their offense could not keep up with that defense. So some changes have been made this year to this Denver team. You bring in former New Orleans Saints head coach Sean Payton to try to fix Russell Wilson and this offense. You look at this Broncos team, they only had 5 picks in this past spring's NFL draft. That's due in part to them having to give the New Orleans Saints draft compensation to sign Sean Payton, doing due to the fact that he was still under contract with them, along with the fact that they also gave a slew of picks to the Seahawks for Russell Wilson. So, of course, Sean Payton wants to go out there and try to fix veteran quarterback Russell Wilson. Will he be able to do it, or was just last year a fluke? We got to wait and see. But nonetheless, you think about Sean Payton's time with the Saints. New Orleans always focused on running the football, and it's going to be interesting to see if he can fix that problem for Denver, as they were 21st in the NFL last season in rushing. The Broncos receiving core is going to look different. No KJ Hamler, as he is sitting out this season with a heart issue. Cortland Sutton looks like he's trying to work his way through some injuries, and you still got Jerry Judy. The Broncos were able to beef up their offensive line as they signed former San Francisco 49ers offensive tackle Mike McGlinchey this offseason. Now, one thing for sure, Denver had one of the top defenses in the NFL last year. And like I said, they had a championship caliber defense. The offense was the issue, and you still have some studs on that side of the ball. You bring over Frank Clark from Kansas City, and then you look at that secondary with the likes of Justin Simmons and Patrick Surtain Jr. And for me, Denver still has a good team. They have a playoff worthy team. It's going to come down to the play of Russell Wilson again. This time around, I'll say this: you got a new head coach in Sean Payton, a head coach that spent the bulk of his time coaching. With Drew Brees at quarterback, of course, that duo led New Orleans to their only Super Bowl championship. But the other thing is this right now for Sean Payton. He comes into this season playing with house money. And I'll say it like this, because if Russell Wilson continues to play like how he did last year, it's easy for Sean Payton to say, hey, it's Russell Wilson, not me. And after the season, Denver would have an opportunity to escape from that big deal that they gave Russell Wilson and move forward with Sean Payton as their head coach. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this team looks. For me, the most important game for the Broncos is their first game of the season this Sunday when they take on the Raiders, because I want to see how Russell Wilson and his offense looks. I want to see if they can get it going, because this is a home game. And remember, you got a Broncos fan base that is extremely loyal to their team. And we saw them turn on Russell Wilson very quickly last year. And it wasn't just them turning on Russell Wilson, it was a divided locker room, you name it. So another slow start by the Denver Broncos would definitely bring out the Boo Birds. It also bring out a lot of controversy in the Rocky Mountains. So let's see how Denver looks here in week number one. And, we'll just simply take it from there. Now, you got the Los Angeles Chargers, and for a very quick second, I almost still called them the San Diego Chargers. But nonetheless, this is a talented team. But how do they put last year's playoff debacle behind them? You go back to January, and the Chargers went on the road and built a 27 to nothing first half lead over the Jacksonville Jaguars in the wild card round, only to lose that contest 31 to 30 on a walk-off field goal. Obviously, that loss stung the Chargers, and you have to wonder if the memories of that defeat are going to carry over into the season for the Lightning Bolts. Now, obviously, the Chargers believe in quarterback Justin Herbert, and they're all in on him. We saw him get his new contract extension this offseason. And again, you bring in Kellen Moore, the former Dallas Cowboys offensive coordinator, to call the shots for the Chargers right here. Let's see if that makes a difference. The Lightning Bolts were 30th in the rushing last season in the NFL. Austin Eckler is not going to be a guy that's going to consistently hit it up between the tackles. He's phenomenal coming out of the backfield as a receiver. He's phenomenal in space. And I think Kellen Moore is going to find a way to maximize that skill set. Also, you got Mike Williams and Keenan Allen at wide receiver. Both of these guys have been injury prone throughout their careers. When they're on the field, they're good. So that's going to be the key for the Chargers, trying to keep them healthy. You also have Gerald Everett at tight end. He's a guy who can create space. And if Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are on the field, it's going to open things up across the middle for a guy like Gerald Everett. You got a solid offensive line with Pro Bowl tackle Rashawn Slater, as well as Pro Bowl center Corey Linsley. And then this defense, you look at these linebackers, they're going to a 3-4 this year. So now you have Joey Bosa as opposed to being a defensive end, he's going to be an outside linebacker this year. You also have Khalil Mack, arguably the best set of book-end rushers in the NFL. And then on the inside, you got Kenneth Murray, and then you bring over longtime Minnesota Viking Eric Kendricks. So the Chargers have the pieces right there. And then you look at the secondary with the likes of J.C. Jackson, Asante Samuel, and then strong safety Derwin James. All of the pieces are in place, especially defensively, because not only do you need a pass rusher, especially in the AFC with all of those elite quarterbacks that you have there, but now they have two quality pass rushers in Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. So, of course, if you want to focus on one, the other one's going to get free. But again, just like it has been, for Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, you got to keep Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack healthy. That's a big key for the Chargers. You look for the Chargers and head coach Brandon Staley. Obviously, the question is going to be, will they be able to put the loss behind them from January against the Jaguars? We've got to wait and see. But then also, the Chargers with this bunch and historically, they beat the teams that they're not supposed to beat, but then they lose to the teams that they're not supposed to lose to. That's going to be a question for me again with the Chargers because I look at this schedule. They open this Sunday at home against the Dolphins. Then they're on the road against Kansas City in week 7. They're at the Jets in week 9. They're home for Denver in week 14. They're home for Buffalo in week 16. They're at Denver in week 17, and then they're home for Kansas City in week 18. So it's a favorable schedule, in my opinion, for the Chargers. But at the same time, they have to go out there and take care of their business. They have Super Bowl talent, but do they have a Super Bowl mindset? We've got to wait and see. And then finally, there's the Las Vegas Raiders. And the best way to sum up the 2022 season for the Raiders is that they went out of their way to lose games. Remember, this was a playoff team in 2021. But last year, we saw the Raiders consistently find ways to blow leads in the fourth quarter. And when it was all said and done, they were only 6-11. So what do? You had a new head coach in Josh McDaniels. It's easy to blame the veteran quarterback that you inherited in Jimmy Garoppolo, pardon me, and Derek Carr, excuse me. And the next thing you know, since they couldn't find a trade partner for Derek Carr and he had that clause in his contract, the Raiders simply cut him. And now, of course, he's with the New Orleans Saints. So Josh McDaniels has a long familiarity with Jimmy Garoppolo dating back to their days with the New England Patriots. So now you bring him into the fold. And of course, we saw Jimmy G become a full-time starter with the San Francisco 49ers. But the thing was, Jimmy G couldn't stay healthy. And then on top of that, when he was on the field, he was good, but he wasn't good when the Niners needed him to be good in those key scenarios. And I talked about this yesterday when I was talking about the NFC West and the 49ers. If Jimmy Garoppolo had played a little bit better in those key situations, obviously he's still their quarterback. But nonetheless, Josh McDaniels was never sold on Derek Carr. I said that from the beginning. And let's see how this marriage in Vegas works out for him and Jimmy G. How motivated is Josh Jacobs going to be? We saw him lead the NFL in rushing last season. The Raiders and Jacobs could not come to an agreement on a long-term deal, had to settle for the franchise tag. So let's see what type of impact he's going to have this season for the Raiders. They have issues on the offensive line. You still got Devontae Adams at wide receiver, but how happy is he going to be? And the reason why I say it is this. Devontae Adams came to the Raiders to play with Derek Carr. Of course, they were teammates together at Fresno State. And like the old saying goes, history does not always repeat, but sometimes it rhymes. And I say that because we saw this play out for Josh McDaniels about 15 years ago when he was a head coach of the Denver Broncos. Came in and immediately wanted to change things. And before you knew it, Pro Bowl quarterback Jay Cutler was on his way to the Chicago Bears. And not too long after that, Pro Bowl wide receiver Brandon Marshall was out the door as well. So Derek Carr's out the door already. Could Devontae Adams be next at some point? It wouldn't surprise me if it happened. Defensively, there is talent for the Raiders with defensive ends Max Crosby and Chandler Jones. Of course, Chandler Jones did not play up to his standards last year. Let's see if that changes this time. You bring in another veteran in that secondary in Marcus Peters, but it's going to be very interesting because the Raiders they struggled at times on defense last year. They were 28th in the NFL in yards allowed, and that definitely has to improve for this team to have a chance. I said it before, and I'm going to say it again. I was not a fan of the Raiders hiring Josh McDaniels. I thought they were going in the right direction with Rich Bisaccia after he took over for John Gruden. And Mark Davis, the Raiders team owner, felt that he needed to go out there and make a splash in hiring a head coach. And honestly, Josh McDaniels simply is not the guy. Because of that, the Raiders not only are going to be fighting an uphill battle, but I have the Raiders pegged to finish in the basement of this division once again. And it's unfortunate because the youngsters don't understand what the Raiders organization has meant to pro football in the past. They were the pride of the AFL. You think about the Raiders of the 70s and 80s, under the likes of John Madden and Tom Flores when Al Davis, the then team owner, was in his heyday. And they have just fallen on bad times, just bad management from the top down. And I'm one of those guys that, you know what? The NFL is better when the Raiders are good. And right now, they've got their fancy new stadium in Las Vegas, and it's just there basically to attract fans from the opposing teams. So, looking at the AFC West as a whole, Kansas City is still in the catbird seat, and until somebody knocks them off, that's where they're going to be. I don't see Denver as being strong enough to overtake Kansas City. I do believe that Denver will improve this season, but honestly, it would not surprise me if this was Russell Wilson's last season playing for the Broncos. Will he continue his career someplace else? Possibly, but I don't see him playing in Denver following this season. The Chargers are good, but at the same time, the Chargers just simply find a way to do themselves in. And I think it's going to show up once again. Kansas City, they may not have the overall talent per se, but the bottom line is as long as you have Patrick Mahomes and as long as you have Andy Reid game planning and motivating on a week in and week out basis, you're going to have your fair share of chances to win. And that's what it's all about with Kansas City. They've taken that New England model under Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. We saw it, of course, with Peyton Manning for years as well, whether it was with the Broncos or the Colts. Basically, you don't pay attention. They go out there and take care of their business on a Sunday to Sunday basis. And before you know it, they've won 13 or 14 games. They've got home field advantage. And then everybody in the AFC has to go to their place to try to figure it out in January. And I think that's going to happen again. I still think that the road to the Super Bowl from the AFC side goes through Kansas City. Mahomes and Reed and company are too tough. And until somebody knocks them off, they are still the champs. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. there's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out, drop a line, and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.